May 15th, 1940. A train hurtles through the panic-stricken landscapes of France. On its platforms, 10 metallic behemoths stand secured, each measuring over 10 meters in length and weighing nearly 70 tons. These are the Char 2C tanks, the largest fighting machines in the world. In a desperate bid to protect them from the advancing German forces, French command scrambles to secure their escape. Suddenly, the air is pierced by the wailing sirens of an air raid. German bombers dive towards the train near the town of Neuchâtel. Explosions shatter the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. One shell strikes the railway ahead, forcing the train to screech to a halt. The tank treads become entangled in shattered timber and splintered tracks. Time is running out. German armored units are a mere 24 kilometers away, closing in with alarming speed. French soldiers frantically clear the wreckage, striving to free the path. Every second counts. These colossal machines must not fall into enemy hands, no matter the cost. But how did France find itself in a predicament where its most formidable tanks were retreating without firing a single shot? The roots of this crisis stretch back nearly a quarter of a century, to a time when the French army was in dire need of breakthrough weaponry. September 15, 1916, marked a pivotal moment in the First World War. On this day, the battlefield witnessed the arrival of something unprecedented. Massive steel monsters on treads lumbered through barbed wire and shell craters, advancing towards German trenches. The British Mark I tanks emerged as a shocking revelation for all involved in the conflict. Despite frequent breakdowns and their lumbering pace, these machines succeeded in breaching enemy defenses where thousands of infantrymen had failed for months. French soldiers in their trenches watched enviously as their allies triumphed. Why did the British possess such weaponry while France did not? This question quickly transformed into a fervent demand. Public outrage surged. Newspapers openly criticized the French army for lagging behind its allies in armored vehicle development. Military leadership found itself under fire from all sides. When journalists pressed army representatives on the status of French tank programs, they were met with confusion. It turned out no such programs existed. France, a leading military power in Europe, was utterly unprepared for the era of armored warfare. General Léon-Augustin Jean-Marie Marais, then serving as the Deputy Secretary of State for the Parti recognized the gravity of the situation. He could not allow the French army to remain devoid of modern weaponry. Marais took it upon himself to meet with industrialist Louis Renault, whose name had already gained recognition for successful automobile production. Their meeting took place in a time of urgency, where the fate of a nation hung in the balance. As the year 1916 drew to a close, a shroud of secrecy enveloped the discussions that would alter the course of warfare. The particulars of these negotiations remain elusive, shrouded in mystery, as a majority of the documents were either destroyed or lost to time. Yet, the outcome of this pivotal meeting was nothing short of monumental. The visionary engineer René agreed to spearhead the development of a French heavy tank, one that would eclipse the capabilities of the British Mark I. However, not all military leaders shared the enthusiasm of Marais. General Jean-Baptiste Estienne harbored a drastically different vision for armored warfare. He believed that the future lay in lightweight, maneuverable machines, capable of rapidly breaching enemy defenses and sustaining a relentless advance. Advocating for the mass production of smaller tanks, such as the recently introduced Renault FT, Estienne dismissed the notion of heavy tanks as cumbersome beasts that would only slow the pace of the offensive, turning them into easy targets for artillery. In stark contrast, Murray insisted on the creation of a heavily armored and armed behemoth, a solitary titan that could carve a path through the German fortifications. The clash of ideologies between these two generals threatened to doom the project before it even had a chance to take flight. At this juncture, Renault had already demonstrated success with the lightweight FT-17, which had captivated military strategists with its agility and effectiveness. Now, Renault aimed for something grander. He commissioned his talented engineer, Rudolf Ernst Mitzmaier, to initiate the design of a true giant. To realize this ambitious vision, Renault turned to the shipbuilding firm Forges et Chantiers de la Méditerranée, commonly known as FCM, located in southern France near Toulon. Their nautical engineering expertise was expected to lend itself to the creation of such a colossal machine. In October of 1916, Murray formally ordered the commencement of prototype development. This initiative was propelled by the demands of the Minister of Armaments, Albert Thomas, who publicly declared the necessity of crafting a tank that would surpass the British Mark I in every conceivable aspect. Together, Thomas and Murray proposed an audacious plan to develop 3 types of heavy tanks weighing 30, 40, and 62 tons, respectively. In an unexpected turn, Estienne and Murray found common ground and approved this ambitious concept. Thus, the FCM-1A project was born, marking the first step towards the creation of a true steel monster. Yet, as engineers toiled over blueprints, a new debate erupted between the generals. Estienne contended that the heavy tank must operate alongside formations of 4 lighter vehicles, providing them with fire support. Murray vehemently opposed this notion, asserting that the giant was fully capable of breaching enemy defenses independently without the need for assistance. The only aspect on which they found agreement was the requirement for mobility. The new tank had to traverse the treacherous terrain of the Western Front with ease, overcoming shell craters and muddy landscapes where previous machines had often become ensnared. As January approached, the stage was set for a new era in armored warfare, one that would redefine the battlefield and the very nature of conflict itself. In the year 1917, whispers reached the ears of General Robert Nivelle, the supreme commander of French forces, about a clandestine endeavor. His senior officers reported that Etienne and Murray were secretly developing an enormous combat vetter Tom, and General Etienne firmly prohibiting any actions that could impede the production of the Schneider's CA-1 tanks and other lighter machines. The rationale was stark. A major offensive against the Germans was scheduled for April, and the army required every available tank immediately, not experimental giants of the future. April's offensive, however, descended into chaos. French forces faced catastrophic losses, achieving virtually no success. The anticipated breakthrough turned into a bloodbath, drowning hopes in a tide of despair. Under immense pressure from public opinion and the government, Minister Thom made a crucial decision, one that would reverberate through the ranks. He canceled all tank programs without exception, including the development of heavy tanks. Resources and funds were to be redirected towards restoring the Army's fighting capability. Murray seethed with fury, but his hands were tied. Yet, fate had other plans for the general. A few weeks later, Minister Thom embarked on a trip to Russia to coordinate military supplies. With the minister out of France, Murray seized the opportunity to clandestinely revive all the cancelled projects. He acted with urgency, fully aware that time was slipping away. Engineers toiled day and night, driven by the race against the clock to complete the prototype before Thom's return. When the minister finally set foot back in France and learned of Murray's insubordination, his wrath was uncontainable. Murray was promptly dismissed from his position for defying a direct order and acting against the army's interests. Yet, the wheels of progress had already turned too far. Development had advanced to a stage where the first prototype, designated F7-1A, was nearly ready for testing. In December of 1917, a demonstration of this colossal machine was held for military leadership. French operators captured footage of the tank as it effortlessly conquered obstacles that had previously seemed insurmountable. The steel giant ascended steep slopes at angles that left conventional tanks hopelessly stuck. It traversed wide trenches where British Mark tanks faltered. The machine emerged from deep craters and ditches as if it were child's play. Measuring 8 meters and 35 centimeters in length, standing 3 meters tall, and spanning 2 meters and 84 centimeters in width, the tank boasted a staggering weight of 41 tons. Its armor was formidable. The frontal section was shielded with plates 35 millimeters thick, impervious to bullets and shrapnel. The rear plates, measuring 21 millimeters, also provided reliable protection against enemy fire. This was not merely a vehicle. It was a harbinger of a new era in warfare, a revolutionary force that would change the landscape of battle forever. As the dust settled on the battlefield, the echoes of its creation would resonate through time, redefining the very nature of conflict. The tanks of that era stood as remarkable achievements of engineering prowess. Most machines were limited to armor barely 12 millimeters thick, barely able to withstand the fire from machine guns. Successful trials made a profound impression on military leadership. Generals recognized the potential of the super-heavy tank concept and greenlit the creation of an even more formidable machine. This new project, designated as the Char 2C, aimed to surpass the initial prototype in every conceivable parameter. Engineers at F7 received carte blanche to forge a true behemoth destined to reign supreme on the battlefield. The design of the Char 2C drew heavily from the innovations of its predecessor, yet the project's scale expanded to unprecedented dimensions. The tank's length reached an astonishing 10 meters and 27 centimeters, evoking more the image of a railway carriage than a combat vehicle. Standing 4 meters tall and 3 meters wide, it tipped the scales at over 70 tons. This was an absolute record among all serial tanks ever constructed. With its colossal size, the machine could traverse trenches up to 4.5 meters wide, gaps that no other tank could hope to cross. The chassis represented an engineering marvel. 24 dual support rollers were meticulously arranged, each affixed to a resilient suspension system. The tracks enveloped the entire hull from nose to tail, ensuring maximum grip on the terrain and distributing the immense weight of the machine. This design empowered the tank to navigate rugged landscapes confidently, overcoming obstacles that halted other vehicles in their tracks. Armor was reinforced to the limits of the technology available at the time. The frontal armor reached a thickness of 45 millimeters, rendering the tank nearly impervious to machine gun fire and most anti-tank rifles. The sides were fortified with 22 millimeters of steel, while the roof measured 13 and the bottom 10 millimeters. The front turret boasted a frontal armor thickness of 35 millimeters, with the rear at 22. When confronted by the German anti-tank rifle, the Mauser Gewehr, bullets merely ricocheted off the armor, inflicting no damage whatsoever. In stark contrast to the average tank armor of the era, which was a mere 12 millimeters, the Char 2C stood as a veritable fortress on tracks. Its armament matched its imposing size. The primary weapon was a 75mm gun from 1997, a slightly modified version of the renowned field artillery, adapted for turret installation and equipped with a 2.5 times magnification sight. The ammunition load comprised 124 shells of various types, including armor-piercing rounds for engaging enemy tanks, high-explosive shells for infantry and fortifications, and specialized anti-tank projectiles. The gun's rate of fire reached 15 rounds per minute, unleashing a deluge of fire upon adversaries. In the annals of military history, the Char emerged not merely as a tank, but as a statement of ambition, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of conflict. It was a behemoth that transformed the landscape of warfare, a relentless force that redefined the very notion of armored combat. The design of this armored vehicle was ingeniously outfitted with 4 to 8mm machine guns, specifically the model from 1914. One of these formidable weapons was strategically positioned in the nose of the hull, while another rested at the tail. 2 additional guns flanked the sides, allowing for a wide range of fire. The side-mounted installations offered a firing arc between 60 and 90 degrees, permitting the crew to engage targets alongside the tank, enhancing its combat capabilities. In contrast, the nose and tail machine guns were housed within rotating turrets, boasting a sweeping 320-degree firing sector, creating a formidable circular defense that left no blind spots for the enemy to exploit. The tank's crew was composed of 13 members, a remarkable record within the realm of armored vehicles. 4 of these crew members were dedicated to operating the machine guns, while the chief gunner was in charge of the 75mm cannon. The commander directed the actions of the entire crew, ensuring cohesion and tactical effectiveness. The loader was responsible for supplying the cannon with ammunition, while the driver maneuvered the vehicle. An additional mechanic monitored the engines, and an electrician managed the electrical systems. The remaining crew members fulfilled auxiliary roles, ready to step in for their comrades when necessary. The Char was a groundbreaking tank, recognized as the first in history to feature a 3-man turret, drastically improving its firing efficiency. This innovative design allowed the commander to focus on battle management and target selection, while the gunner aimed and the loader ensured a steady supply of ammunition. Crew members accessed the tank through several rectangular hatches located along the hull's sides. Initially, communication relied on voice, but as the design evolved, radios were installed to facilitate coordination among multiple tanks. Visibility was enhanced by specially designed periscopic domes near the turrets. These ingenious devices permitted the crew to survey the battlefield while remaining shielded from enemy fire and shrapnel. When necessary, the domes could be opened to provide a clearer view in relatively safe conditions. Inside, the tank's layout was a marvel of thoughtful engineering. Designers divided the expansive hull into 2 distinct sections, separated by the front and rear turrets. Each compartment operated almost autonomously, allowing crew members to move freely without the cramped conditions typical of other tanks of that era. The front section housed the driver and his assistants, along with the vehicle's control systems and a portion of the ammunition supply. The central section contained the turrets with the main armament and the tank commander. The rear section accommodated the power plant, the electrician, the mechanic, and additional ammunition. This revolutionary layout ensured the tank's resilience even if one compartment sustained damage. The powertrain consisted of 2 MPRSD diesel engines, each boasting significant power. The story of these engines is steeped in irony. Originally designed for German airships, they were intended to elevate them into the skies. Yet they found their purpose in the ground-bound might of the Char de Chevaux. This unexpected twist in history not only highlights the adaptability of engineering, but also underscores the relentless evolution of military technology. German military airships, once symbols of innovation, found themselves repurposed as France sought to enhance its armored capabilities. These behemoths, boasting a combined power of 400 horsepower, propelled a 70-ton tank to a commendable maximum speed of 12 kilometers per hour. For such a colossal machine, this was a respectable performance, on par with other heavy tanks of the First World War era. Yet, fate had a different design in mind. The impressive potential of this creation would never be realized on the battlefields of that war. The design and production of the Char de C took an agonizingly long time. By the winter of 1918, the final shots of the Great War had echoed through Europe. Germany capitulated, and the long-awaited peace settled over the continent. The Char de C never had the opportunity to prove its worth against the entrenched German positions and machine gun nests for which it was due. Despite this, work on the Char de C continued, albeit at a languid pace. The first machine was finally delivered to the French Army in 1921, 3 years A. French military leadership classified these vehicles as super heavy tanks, placing immense hopes upon their shoulders. Marshal Pétain and General Etienne initially envisioned an order for over 300 of these giants by the early 20s, believing them to be the cornerstone of France's future armored might. However, the harsh reality of technological advancement soon became apparent. Newer, more sophisticated designs emerged at a rapid pace, rendering the production of such costly and complex machinery during peacetime impractical. Ultimately, the decision was made to limit production to a mere 10 units, shifting focus towards developing more modern armored vehicles. The 10 constructed tanks became the subject of constant attention from French engineers throughout the 20s and 30s. Military command recognized the rapidly aging technology and sought to extend their combat value through regular upgrades. More powerful radios were installed to enhance communication among crews. Observation systems underwent refinements, and new targeting devices made their appearance. Engines received overhauls and modifications to improve reliability. Armor was reinforced with additional plating in the most vulnerable areas. The armament was upgraded with new types of ammunition, boasting enhanced penetration and fragmentation characteristics. Despite these efforts, the fundamental issue remained unaltered. The tank's design was rooted in the conditions of the First World War, engineered for a slow breakthrough through flat lines of trenches and barbed wire obstacles. By the mid-30s, military doctrine had evolved, leaving the Char de C as a relic of a bygone era, outpaced by the unforgiving march of progress. In the crucible of warfare, the balance of power shifted dramatically. Speed, maneuverability, and the capacity for rapid breakthroughs became the new currency of conflict. The emergence of advanced anti-tank artillery boasting high muzzle velocities rendered once reliable armor obsolete. What had been impenetrable 20 years prior was now vulnerable to the very weapons designed to conquer the battlefield. German engineers relentlessly pursued the development of third- and fourth-generation tanks, outfitting them with formidable cannons and counter-shell armor. The Char de C, once a symbol of French military might, gradually transformed from an imposing weapon into a relic, a museum piece on treads. Its 45mm frontal armor, impervious to the machine guns of the First World War, now crumbled under the assault of modern anti-tank guns, which measured 37 and 47 millimeters. With a top speed of merely 12 kilometers per hour, the tank had become a sitting duck, an easy target for both aerial assaults and the swift German panzer divisions. Its once mighty dimensions, meant to intimidate, now served as a glaring disadvantage, making the vehicle conspicuous and vulnerable from afar. By the late 1930s, French tank crews were acutely aware that their giants had become hopelessly outdated, ill-equipped to face the rigors of contemporary combat. As the clock struck September 1st, 1939, Germany unleashed its aggression upon Poland, igniting the flames of the Second World War. Just 2 days later, France and Britain declared war on Germany, honoring their Allied commitments. French command, caught in a frenzied mobilization, dusted off every available asset, including long-retired equipment. By October of that same year, 10 Char sea tanks were hastily readied for battle, assembled into the 51st Tank Battalion. To bolster the morale of both the populace and the armed forces, each tank was bestowed with the name of a renowned French region. They bore titles such as Anjou, Champagne, Berry, Touraine, Poitou, Provence, Alsace, Lorraine, Brittany, and Normandy. These names symbolized the unity of France in the face of the German threat, serving as constant reminders to the soldiers of what they were fighting for. Propaganda services eagerly seized upon the imagery of these massive tanks, showcasing them in posters and newsreels, portraying them as invincible instruments of retribution. For ordinary citizens and fresh recruits, the sight of these steel colossi inspired a reverent awe. Towering 10 meters high and looming 4 meters tall, they left an indelible impression with their sheer power and grandeur. People believed these giants would sweep away any foe, leading France to swift victory. Newspapers published enthusiastic articles, heralding the indomitable fortresses on treads that would safeguard the homeland against German aggression. Yet, the seasoned tankers of the 51st Battalion viewed the situation through a starkly different lens. They understood all too well the limitations of their machines and harbored no illusions about their combat worth. Confronting contemporary German tanks, be it the Panzer III or IV, would spell certain doom. German artillery could penetrate Char sea armor from any distance, while the French 75mm guns struggled to make an impact against the formidable enemy. In this tense atmosphere, where hope clashed with grim reality, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the very fabric of military doctrine and the resilience of nations. The colossal machines of the early 20th century, remnants of a bygone era, faced an uphill battle against the robust armor of contemporary German tanks. Their sluggish speed rendered evasive maneuvers nearly impossible, transforming these behemoths into prime targets on the battlefield. French military leaders were acutely aware of these shortcomings and made a pivotal decision. The 10 Char sea tanks, symbols of French might, were relegated to deep reserves, their purpose limited to propaganda and bolstering troop morale. These colossal vehicles were shuttled from one location to another, paraded before soldiers and journalists, captured in the frames of newsreels. Yet their deployment against German forces was strictly off-limits. The loss of such powerful icons would inflict a devastating blow to the morale of both the army and the civilian population, while their actual combat effectiveness was rendered null. Months unfolded in a peculiar standoff, with French and German armies entrenched against one another, largely avoiding significant combat. The 10 giants lumbered through French territory, their formidable 75mm guns and 8 machine guns silent, fully operational yet untouched by the chaos of war. Crews conducted regular drills, maintaining their machines in pristine condition, acutely aware of the absurdity of their predicament. Then, on the 10th of May, 1940, everything shifted. Germany launched a sweeping offensive in the west, targeting Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France. German armored columns surged through the French defenses, showcasing the new blitzkrieg tactics. The French army, unprepared for such a rapid pace of warfare, began to retreat under the overwhelming pressure of superior enemy forces. The command of the 51st Tank Battalion issued an urgent order to evacuate the 10 giants to the rear. The machines could not fall into enemy hands under any circumstances. They were loaded onto specialized railway flat cars and formed into a convoy, heading southward, away from the front lines. Yet events unfolded with catastrophic speed. German forces advanced far more quickly than French command had anticipated. By the 15th of May, the convoy crawled along the ravaged tracks near a small town. Suddenly, the air was pierced by the wailing of falling bombs. German dive bombers unleashed a torrent of ordnance on the railway convoy. Explosions shook the ground, sending plumes of earth and smoke skyward. Shrapnel clanged against the armored hulls of the tanks as rails splintered into fragments. French gunners fought desperately to fend off the assault, but wave after wave. When the bombardment finally ceased, the devastation was apparent. The tracks ahead of the convoy lay in ruins, littered with debris. Fragments of wooden ties and twisted metal wrapped around the treads of several tanks. Soldiers scrambled in a frantic effort to clear the wreckage, striving to free their machines from the clutches of destruction. The reality of their situation loomed heavy. The giants, once symbols of strength, now stood vulnerable in a rapidly changing landscape of war. Caterpillars understood all too well that each passing minute could be their last. The relentless advance of German tank divisions loomed ever closer. At last, movement resumed, and the convoy pressed on. Yet, not far from the banks of the river Meuse, approximately 40 kilometers from the site of the initial bombardment, the train came to a halt. The tracks lay blocked by a shattered bridge and abandoned cars, rendering any detour impossible. Intelligence reports delivered grim news. German forces were merely 24 kilometers away and closing in rapidly. Colonel Furman, the battalion commander, found himself confronting an insurmountable dilemma. Time had run out for the tanks to maneuver on their own. Their sluggish pace meant that the Germans would intercept the column long before they reached safety. Abandoning the vehicles would hand invaluable trophies to the enemy. Only one option remained. The colonel issued the order to destroy all 10 tanks. With heavy hearts, the crews began executing the command. They set explosives on vital components of machines with which they had shared so many months of their lives. In the chaos and constant threat of capture, the work proceeded haphazardly. Explosions thundered one after another, shaking the ground. Turrets were ripped from their mounts, armor cracked under the strain. When the leading German units arrived at the site of destruction, they found 9 mangled carcasses of tanks. However, the 10th vehicle, bearing the name Champagne, remained almost untouched. In their panic, the French crew had failed to fully destroy it. German engineers quickly recognized the value of this prize. The tank was loaded onto a platform and dispatched to Berlin as a symbol of victory over France. In the German capital, this giant was put on public display, showcasing the superiority of German weaponry. After the war, in 1948, the tank was photographed one last time in Berlin. Then, it vanished without a trace. What became of the last Char D2C remains a mystery. Perhaps it was cut into scrap metal during the reconstruction of the devastated city. Maybe it was transported to the Soviet Union along with other spoils and dismantled there. There's even a theory that the tank still lies somewhere in an abandoned warehouse or on a forgotten range. The fate of this iconic war machine continues to elude resolution, a riddle that remains unsolved to this day.